Hey there, welcome to episode 106 of the Social Business Engine podcast, the podcast where I invite thought leaders from all industries to share their real-world expertise on social and digital communications best practices. I'm Bernie Borges from Find and Convert and your host of the Social Business Engine podcast. On today's episode, I am excited to bring back Chad Mitchell. Chad is Senior Director, Digital Communications at Walmart. Now, on this episode, we are going to get a behind-the-scenes look at the impact of Walmart's commitment to telling its story through digital channels and how it is rebuilding its reputation with its associates and customers. This episode is sponsored by our very own Social Business Workshop for Business Development. This online workshop is delivered in both group and one-on-one coaching sessions. It's designed for business development teams who want to learn how to use social media channels to build key relationships that improve sales results. This workshop has demonstrated that while training delivers results, coaching guarantees it. To learn more about this online workshop, just visit socialbusinessengine.com/workshops. And now, here's my interview with Chad Mitchell, Senior Director, Digital Communications at Walmart. Chad, welcome back to the Social Business Engine podcast.
Hey, Bernie. Thanks for having me. It's great to be back with you. I'm looking forward to talking some more about what we're doing here at Walmart and connecting with your audience.
Absolutely. Well, it has been not quite a year since our first recording. It was episode 71. It published in August 2015. We are recording this near the end of March 2016. And at that time, Chad, we talked about how Walmart had just launched the Walmart Today initiative to celebrate the customer. So, why don't we begin with kind of the background on Walmart's commitment to storytelling in the context of your relationship with both associates and customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Walmart Today, as you pointed out, launched last year and was really an attempt by our team and by Walmart to get our story out there and connect with our various stakeholder groups, our various audiences. Those include core customers, those include our associates, those include any different number of people who interact with our brand, who shop with us, and even some of the folks who have some critical opinions of the company. We want to give them a chance to learn a little bit more about us, our associates, the role that we play in the communities in which we operate. And so Walmart Today became our platform for more robust storytelling. Nothing terribly unique. I know a lot of brands are doing this. A lot of brands are doing it well, like a GE or a Marriott. But we really wanted to get out there and expose people to the story of Walmart and the folks who work here, the folks who shop with us, and what we're doing, in our estimation, to make the world a better place. And so Walmart Today really became a launching pad for us to share those stories with those different audiences.
Yeah, you say, Chad, that it's nothing new because a lot of brands are doing the storytelling. But I think what's interesting and perhaps unique for Walmart is that, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the largest employer in the world. Am I right about that?
Correct. Private employer, yeah.
Yeah, with what, 2 million employees?
2.2 or 2.3 now across the world,
yeah.
and 1.3 million in the United States.
That's huge. I've had people on from IBM on my podcast, and they're a small company compared to you with only a couple 100,000 employees.
Yeah, the size and scale that we have is what I think makes us uniquely positioned to tell some of these stories. And when we do things, whether it's hiring veterans, whether it's raising wages and opportunities for our associates, whether it's commitment to domestic manufacturing, whatever it is that we do, when we do it, we have the ability to move the world, to move others in the retail segments, to follow our lead. And you're right. I mean, when you're that big, when we do things, we think there's a profound impact behind them. And what we've learned is that for far too long, I think a lot of those efforts have gone unrecognized or unknown, and that's why there was a real impetus to bring those stories to life and to let people, really get to know us and meet the people that make this company go, and meet the people who shop with us and trust us, and that's what Walmart Today was really created to do.
Okay. So you want to start to get into a few examples? Because you've got several examples that you've been unfolding over the last year or so.
Yeah, we're really excited to, tell, stories that ladder back to some of the big priorities and commitments we've made here. So, a couple that jump to mind right away is the investment that we've made in our associates, and we announced that back in early 2015 that over the next 2 years we would invest $2.7 billion, which is it's a hard number to fathom, but $2.7 billion in raised wages and additional educational training opportunities for our associates. And then, several years back, we made a commitment to source more of our products from the U.S., and we've done a number of open calls where we invite, potential suppliers for Walmart to come here and pitch us on their products. And so we've really had a focus on telling some of those stories of companies that have helped revitalize the economy by making their products here, bringing jobs back to the U.S. And so we really started to develop, story themes and almost episodic programming. And so we created some overarching thematics to help tell those stories. And when we think about our associates specifically and the great stories that they have, and then we saw what happens, to your point earlier about our size and scale and how many people we have here, that when you raise wages and when you provide more educational opportunities and training opportunities, the change that happens for the associate is profound, but then the change that can happen to other folks, almost, like a ripple effect. So that's where we came up with the name for that series of stories that we want to tell about our associates, the ripple effect. And then we started to go out and talk to associates and bring their stories to life through, we think, very creative storytelling. And it's been well received by our associates, by our customers, and by a lot of the key audiences that we're trying to reach. And similarly with Made in the USA, we have gone into factories, and in the one that I'm most proud of, we went out to the Pacific Northwest to tell the story of fish people. Went out on the boat. It's probably reminiscent of like a Deadliest Catch or a Wicked Tuna in terms of just visually compelling, great stories about the folks that work there and what they're doing to, keep jobs there, the impact that they have on their local economy, and then the pride they feel when they see their products at Walmart. So really trying to bring to life profound and compelling stories, and having an overarching theme for, associates and opportunity through the ripple effect, and then our commitment to domestic manufacturing through some of our Made in America programming has really helped us, I think, connect with our audience in a meaningful way, so that they can get to see what it's like for the folks who work here, and get to see what it's like for some of our suppliers as well.
Yeah. So my listeners know that we'll have links to those in the show notes, but I want to comment on the Fish People one because I was really taken by that. I really appreciated how one of the fishermen, one of the guys on the boat, and just to paint a picture here, Chad, for my listeners, we're not talking small fishing boat. This is a big fishing boat where these people are out there every day earning a living. And they were telling the story, because that's the whole purpose of it, right? They were telling the story. And of course, the visual element is, at the end of the day, they're unloading all their catch, and it's a lot of fish, right? And they were telling the story how gratifying it is that these fish get boxed up, and that's probably not the right terminology, but they get, packaged up or whatever, put on a truck, and they just go right down the road to the local Walmart in their community. And you can tell the authenticity of their satisfaction of that, that it wasn't being shipped to some unknown location. It was going into their community. Yeah,
and we see that when we go talk to them, and then we told the story of Nook, who does baby products, and then Coleman, who I'm sure everybody's familiar with the coolers. But you're right, the pride, the sense of just overwhelming, pride from the folks who work for those companies when they're able to put in a hard day's work, and then, as you said, see their package on our shelves. And I and my wife have seen the Fish People, and we've bought the Fish People fish at my local Walmart here. So it's like, I know those guys. Like, I know the people who went out on that boat, and we know their CEO, and we've talked to him about, why he started doing business with Walmart, and the impact that, he thinks he can have with his product, and that we can have by talking about the Fish People story. It's been a tremendous partnership, and those are fun stories to tell all the way around.
Yeah. So the Fish People is an example of the is it made in America or made by America?
Made by America. You're right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's an example of the made by America episodic model. But you mentioned earlier the ripple effect, and you kind of touched on that. Can you do a little bit of a deeper dive on what that's about?
Yeah, for sure. So, I think that it's no secret that one of the biggest headwinds that we face at Walmart, and I think some folks in the fast food industry are facing, and it's clearly become a big theme in the presidential elections and everywhere, is sort of income equality, and what the wage should be for folks. Is it a living wage? Is there a minimum wage? Well, we made a business decision back in 2015 to do, make an investment in our associates over the next couple of years, which included a raise in wages, but it also included a lot of educational opportunities, a lot of opportunities for upskilling and training. And we just fundamentally believe that there are skills that folks should perhaps acquire when they are working for Walmart that they can then take to another job. There's sort of a sense that folks can get the skill sets that they need, the training that they need to either be great contributors during their Walmart time with their Walmart career if they want to stay here, but if they leave, then they're well equipped for upward mobility. And so it's not necessarily about what they're doing here, but it's about the next step. And so there's been a big focus on wages, but there's also a big focus on the other things that come with that. And so when you start to break that down and dig deep into what that means, it's about the associate who was able to get their high school education equivalency during their time at Walmart, or that we've helped pay for some additional education, or that they've been able to learn a language, or acquire a skill set that allowed them to move to the next job. So we're not really focusing on telling the stories of what Bernie or Chad could do with more income. That's a pretty powerful story when you break that out, but there's a bigger story to be told about Jerome, who's a real associate who was the first one in his family to go to college and then got a job at Walmart. And since we told his story, he's actually been promoted again. There's Enrique, who had a lot of different jobs at Walmart while he was trying to figure out what he wanted to do, and then went through optometry school and is now an optometrist at one of our vision centers in one of our stores. And we've got Bogey, who came from Mongolia and didn't know how to speak English and was really shy because of that, and kind of sat back and got a job at Walmart, got trained, got an education, got an opportunity to learn English, and is now one of our store managers. And so we've got, as you alluded to earlier, when you've got 2.2 or 2.3 million associates around the globe, we are not in short supply of stories.
Yeah.
But the big question that we have to answer is, who's believable? Who's the audience going to take their cues from? And so is it the big monolithic brand of Walmart? Is it some of our critic groups that are then providing a counter narrative, or is it the associate themselves? And clearly, I think we all know, and your listeners, I'm sure, all know, that authenticity and getting it in the voice of the person is going to be the most powerful vehicle to tell that story. And so what we're trying to do is really connect our audience to these individual associates and bring their story to life. And so we really tried to think of a creative approach to draw viewers in, let them get to know our associates in 30 or 45 or 60 seconds, which is tough, but we've got to draw them in. We're in this era of short attention spans. There's a lot of content out there for people to engage with, and so we thought if we could create something slightly different, we would be able to capture people's attention, get them to watch these short videos and introduce them to these different associates. And so for your listeners and for folks that have seen our content, we went with an animated style, and it's almost like high grade, I don't want to say cartoon, but it's animated. And then at the end, there's a reveal, and then we introduce people to the real life Walmart associate. And it's had a profound impact on people's perception of the company and their willingness to find out more about us and our associates, and to, these are very credible people, these associates who are telling their stories, and we're just facilitating those and trying to bring those to life. And so Ripple Effect's been a real, a high point for us since you and I last spoke in terms of, figuring out a new way to tell some of those associate stories.
Okay, cool. So you actually just provided a great segue to where I wanted to go next in our conversation, because you talked about how you're using an animated approach to the content on the Ripple Effect. And I know you've given me a little bit of insight, and I want to talk about it now for my listeners, into a pretty unique and collaborative approach that you have in creating this content that involves collaboration with partners. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we believe it or not, and I'm sure some people will be shaking their head when I say this, we have limited resources. I think all companies and all agencies and everybody out there who's trying to figure out how to tell compelling stories and how to get their message out there, nobody's got like an endless supply of money, and the same thing applies to us. And so we need to be we're pretty lean, we're pretty scrappy, and we've tried to figure out the best way to do this. And as we've thought about the way to build out our team, we've looked at what it would look like if we hired all those people and brought them on board. And that really wasn't sustainable. And so then we went out and we looked for an agency partner who would be willing to really develop a new model, and not necessarily an agency client relationship, but more of a we're in this together, partners, collaborative approach. And so we've found a partner that is, we think, just great at this, and was willing to and even suggested to us this approach that we really loved. And so we've actually organized ourselves internally and almost look like an internal agency of record to the other various members of the Walmart team, so that we can help almost service them as an agency. So we talk about what their announcement might be. We talk about how we might react to some news. We talk about our storytelling, and then we work with our creative agency, who has actually embedded a member of their team here with us in Northwest Arkansas. So they're based in LA. We've got part of their team that's embedded with us here in Northwest Arkansas, and then we've really worked hard to break down internal silos and are really working across our organization. We've got our internal comms team, our external comms team, our digital communications team, and we've really blended those together so that it's integrated communications. And I think we've all recognized that the days of internal communications have come and gone. Anything you say internally is going to go external, and anything you say external, you should expect your employees or your associates to be aware of. And so we're really just developing content and trying to tell stories that are meaningful to our different audiences. And so if we're talking to core customers or occasional customers, there might be a slight tweak on the message in terms of the way we would then communicate with associates or different audiences. But by working together and having a line of sight into the stories that we're trying to tell and the messages that we're trying to deliver, it gives us, I think, a much better chance of landing on the right treatment and telling the right story to these disparate audiences, at the point of conception, rather than getting to the point of publishing or distribution and realizing that you haven't thought through all of your different audiences. And so for us, being as big as we are, with as many different facets of life that we touch and as many different people that we're trying to communicate with, it's very important for us on the front end to have a collaborative approach, to be openly communicating with one another. And so having our agencies embedded with us and then working cross-functionally here has been fantastic. And then the other part of it, which has really been helpful for us, is it's not just our creative agency. We've got some consultants that we work with. We've got our tech partner who helps maintain and create the platform on which our corporate website and our blog Walmart Today sit on. And so we've opened up the lines of communications between those groups, and just within the last couple of weeks, had us all at an offsite where, my expectation and what I've told these various groups is, you don't need to wait for me to set up a conference call or one of these meetings. You guys should feel free to talk to each other, to think about, our audiences and how it correlates to the content that we're developing, and then the platforms that we might need to build, and, our hosting solutions and our social media, and all of it going together, I think makes us a much more effective group with the resources that we have available to us.
Mm-hmm. Being an agency guy myself, although our legacy has been B2B, but one of the things we've always said is we like to be, and our best client relationships over our 14-year history, Chad, has been where we are an extension of our client's team. And that's kind of what I'm hearing, is that they're part of your team. These agencies are embedded with you. They are part of your team. And especially the fact that they're physically there with you, that embedded element takes that to another level. They're there with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's, the challenge that we had when we built our internal team and I know you know this, and I'm sure your listeners will recognize this, is that not all client agency relationships are perfect, and there's always that moment when you want to blow off some steam. And I'm sure if you're the client, you want to blame your agency, and if you're your agency, you want to blow off some steam about your client. And with them sitting here with us, not that we've found a need to do so, but you really can't do that. But it's been, I think you're right. They are definitely an extension of our team. And I think we think of it beyond that. They are our team. And so when I think about my team, which is represented by the 6 people that I have here, physically reporting to me, but then when I think about all the other resources that we can tap into, I think it's how we've been able over the last year to handle the massive workload that we have coming into us and all of the demands that are put on us for, various pieces of content and the audiences that we're trying to reach is only by setting those relationships up. And I think, I guess if people are listening and are looking for a takeaway, I think the key is going in and making sure that the rules of engagement, I guess, are clear to all the agencies. There is no competition here. We're not looking for our consultant to try to get into the content game. Mm-hmm. That's what our creative agency is for. And we're not looking for our creative agency to all of a sudden pitch us on social listening because we've got somebody for that. And so they all know where their lane is and they're comfortable with it. And we're overly transparent in terms of where we're going, and we're all aligned on where we want to go. And I think it has created a very healthy environment where everybody can bounce ideas off of each other. And I think it's led to the best work that we've ever done.
Okay, cool. So I want to ask you, with this small workforce of 2.3 million people and all this great content that you're creating, much of which is about them, are you communicating out to the workforce ways that they can amplify it? Are you providing any kind of encouragement, training, governance, combinations thereof?
Sure. Yeah. Most of the efforts thus far have been focused on the U.S. workforce for a lot of reasons. Our hope, moving forward, is that we're going to start to do some more global storytelling. We have started to make some of our technologies and some of the systems that we're using for our content management system available to our partners across the world. And I think that will lead to more opportunities to learn about the folks there and some stories that we can tell. With regards to sharing content and social sharing specifically, we would love to empower our workforce to spread the good word. And I think you and I touched on this the last time we talked. We know, despite some criticism and despite some other narratives that are out there, that our workforce is highly engaged and highly motivated. and thinks that the company is a good place for them, and understands the opportunities available to them, and they are looking to spread the word and share good news. And so we are continuing to work through the process of what that means with regards to making information available to them and empowering them to share. And quite honestly, that's been a change for us within the last 3 to 5 years. And it's I think you and I probably talked about this as well the first time. It's really the storytelling and a lot of the external communications that we are doing are also not they haven't been around for very long for us, because we just we haven't been out there telling our story in a way that has been meaningful and compelling, and so we also haven't really encouraged the workforce to feel I guess empowered to go out on their own and share their experiences and talk about what it means to work here and the customers they serve and vice versa. And so we've just started to scratch the surface on that and how you make it easy for folks in the world today to get the information about us and then to share it through with their networks is definitely something that we're focused on moving forward.
Okay, cool. So one last topic, and then I want to move to my summary, my takeaways from our conversation here, Chad. But I do want to talk about how you're measuring results, because you're about a year or so, give or take, into this big initiative. And I'd like you to comment on how's it going and how are you measuring those results?
Yeah, happy to. So I think that the metrics in the ROI question is the one that comes up all the time. Like, how do you measure the impact of your social post? How do you measure the impact of content on your blog or your corporate site? And it's one that we've really wrestled with, as I'm sure a lot of people have, in terms of what you're looking at and what you put value on. And so we kind of took a step back to figure out what is it that we're trying to do. And so I think we started by trying to raise awareness. We just found that, while if Walmart was a political candidate, we would start our candidacy with like 99% name ID. People know who we are. The flip side to that is that like 99% of people have an opinion. Fortunately for us, the majority of it is favorable, but there is sort of a counter narrative that exists out there, and so we've got to worry about that. So what that means is people know who we are and they have an opinion of us, but we found that they really weren't aware of a lot of the big things that we took so much pride in. So whether it was hiring veterans, whether it was committing to domestic manufacturing, whether it was women's empowerment, investing in our own associates, we really weren't breaking through. And so I think for a year or so, we really kind of focused on raising awareness, and really where we've landed since you and I last spoke is trying to figure out sort of attitudinal shifts amongst our key audiences after we've had an opportunity to introduce them to Fish People or Enrique or Bogey or Jerome or veterans we've hired. So what is their perception of the company before they are aware of these stories, and then after they've met these folks and after they've heard the story, what is their perception of the company? And what we found, especially with Ripple Effect, is when these key audiences that we're trying to communicate with are introduced and get to know those associates through that storytelling treatment or mechanism, their perception of the company changes for the better, and their attitudes and their favorability of Walmart is going up when they're exposed to what we believe is the real representation of our company. And so that's all we're really focused on from a measurement standpoint, is understanding where people sit sort of post-exposure or pre-exposure, and then where do people sit post-exposure. And I've said that our old talking point used to be right message to the right audience on the right channel at the right time. And then I've kind of admitted that I'm not sure we knew what that meant when we were saying it. We fundamentally, we kind of philosophically knew what it meant, but how did we measure it and how did we know for sure? Now I can tell you categorically, we know what the right message is, what the right channel is, who the right audience is to receive it and what's the right time for them to get it. And then I can tell you whether it's having a positive impact or a negative impact on our reputation. And obviously, if it's not working and it's having a negative impact, we're going to stop and we're going to figure out a different way to tell our story. But I, without getting into too many details, I can tell you that people should expect to see a lot more ripple effect stories.
All right, cool. Well, let's do this, Chad. Let's segue now to my summary takeaways from this conversation here, and this is where I just review the notes I've been taking on kind of the key points from this conversation. I ask you to just fill in any holes or elaborate on anything that you think I missed. And we began the conversation with a review of Walmart Today, where you're approximately a year old into this major communications initiative, and how the focus is really to connect with your various audiences, your customers, associates, and also opinion holders in the marketplace. And you learned part of the why of doing it was you learned that so much of what you were doing as a company went unrecognized. So you've been on this mission to tell stories, to let people know what you've been doing, especially as it relates to your investment in associates. And you talked about how that's one of the biggest priorities is the investment that Walmart is making in associates over the next 2 years, $2.7 billion in investments in wages and training. And also investments in just sourcing more products from the U.S. And even though you're a global brand, obviously you're headquartered in the U.S. So as we all know, that's a hot topic is, American companies buying from American companies. So you've been creating stories with themes or episodic models. And we talked about Made by America. We talked about the fish people example and how the fish they catch is packaged and sold locally, and it's very gratifying to them. And we also talked about the ripple effect episodic theme and how it's really focused on the associates, which is really the employee, and how you're really telling the stories about how you're investing in their career. It's more than investing in their wages. You're investing in their career. And, you shared several examples of that with several people. Jerome was one of them. I didn't get all of them, but how you're sharing those stories about those real people and how after Walmart invests in them, you see the effect that it has on them, their life, their family. And it's all about the believability factor that employee or audiences, rather, that you're reaching believe these stories when they come from the employee. So you make that connection with both the Walmart associates and then, of course, the world at large. And then we talked about your approach to creating all this content. You said that the ripple effect is an animated style approach, and you're doing that with limited resources. Even though you're this huge corporation, you've got a relatively small team. And you looked at the feasibility of hiring all the talent. You decided it wasn't feasible, so you've built this model where you've got multiple agency partners that are embedded with you. You kind of act as this internal agency of record, if you will, across the Walmart business functions. And you've broken down the internal silos between PR, communications, marketing, et cetera. And by bringing all these agencies together with, clear lines of demarcation or rules of engagement where they're clear and everybody knows what their roles are, there's no competition. They work together and you all work together, and it's kind of like a kumbaya thing going on in a maybe a literal way. And it's working, and that's awesome. And then we talked about how there's a big focus on communicating out to the workforce. And even though right now, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been U.S. focused, you've got more of a global focus or expanding more globally soon. And you want to help employees spread the stories. So you're kind of moving towards empowering them and showing them how to make it more easy. And then the last thing we discussed was how you're measuring results. And you talked about how previously, and I mentioned this already, a lot of people just weren't aware of all the things that Walmart's doing that you're very proud of, things like hiring veterans. So what you're really measuring is the attitudinal shift from people after they hear the stories, kind of the before and the after. And you mentioned that the ripple effect stories have been, the real kind of needle mover, if you will, because the perceptions and the favorability of Walmart has really gone up measurably when you measure the before and after someone's consumed the ripple effect stories. And how now if you're delivering the right message in the right channel to the right audience at the right time. So, Chad, is there anything you'd like to comment on or add to in my summary?
I think you nailed it, Bernie. I don't think I could have said it better myself. We will continue to look for ways to introduce audiences to, I think, the great men and women who work here. And I think, to your point earlier, that our efforts previously, this is where the size and scale that you've pointed out a couple times can really work against you, because when you are as large as we are and you touch as many facets of life, I've always thought, since working here, that I think a lot of companies, when they think about where audiences are going to be willing to sort of interact with them or receive their content. So if I am interested in travel, then Marriott or one of those other companies has license to talk to me. And I've always thought that we've got license to talk about just about anything because of logistics, what we touch, the diversity of our associates, where we are globally, that there's so many different things that we could talk about. And I think that's where our struggle has been previously, which is it's almost like a boil the ocean kind of thing. And so when you talk about that much stuff to so many different audiences, it has a way of diluting your effectiveness. And by focusing our efforts on 3 or 4 key themes and understanding who the audiences are that we need to talk to, it's really allowed us to focus our efforts in a much more strategic way and then measure the impact of those efforts. So we're pretty thrilled with where we've gotten since you and I last spoke, and we're looking forward to a great 2016.
Yeah, well, I love it. I mean, personally, what I like about it is that you are just an awesome example of social business in action, because all of this is content. The content is being produced and shared through social channels and through just a variety of digital communication channels. And then you're moving the needle. You know exactly the impact that it's having. So that is fantastic. So, Chad, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast and sharing your story. Where would you like to send people who are listening that want to learn more about what you're doing at Walmart?
Well, we've said it many times today, but WalmartToday.com is the best place that you can go to. It's the resource for what's happening here at the company today, what's going on with our associates, what's going on in the neighborhoods that we operate, and the things that we're trying to do to make the world a better place. And so that's my only pitch, is that folks go visit us at Walmart Today, and from there I think they'll find a lot of different social extensions. And then as we look to build out our platform this year, and we look to get into different mediums, I think people will be able to find us, because we'll do a heavy dose of promoting it there. But we're pretty thrilled with where Walmart Today is, and that I think I was a little bit remiss in not talking about the fact that we have created a TV show that is oriented primarily for our associates, but also we do make available externally, and so people can find that through the blog as well.
Fantastic. Well, my listeners know that all that will be linked up in the show notes. So, Chad, thank you so much for coming back and sharing the Walmart Today story. It's been really, really worthwhile, and don't be surprised if about a year from now you come back for the 3rd time, if you're willing.
Third time's a charm. Thanks,
all right,
buddy.
Terrific. Thank you, Chad. Well, I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Chad Mitchell, Senior Director, Digital Communications at Walmart. This episode is sponsored by our very own Social Business Workshop for Business Development. To learn more about this online workshop, just visit our website, socialbusinessengine.com/workshops. Hey, are you subscribed by email to get our weekly podcast updates that we send every Friday? If you're not, and you'd like to be, just hit our subscribe page at our website. And would you consider also, if you haven't already done so, writing a review of this podcast in iTunes so you can share your sentiments and others might discover the Social Business Engine podcast. We've got a direct link to our podcast that goes right to iTunes. Just go to socialbusinessengine.com/iTunes. And lastly, I invite you to engage with me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is my name, @BernieBorges. This podcast is also on Twitter and on Instagram with the handle SBEngine. And we're also on Facebook with our full name, and the hashtag that we use most often is SBE Show. Speaking of show, that is going to do it for this episode. I want to thank my guest again, Chad Mitchell, Senior Director, Digital Communications at Walmart. This is Bernie Borges of Find and Convert, wishing you continued success on your social business journey.